Okay, this is our last class at this level. We're dealing with the progressed angles, and yeah, it's especially sensitive, factor, and it's still progressions. It's still inner symbolical and inner development, represents inner symbolism and inner development. But since we have 4 angles and they all progress, if you did how we used to do started with the progressions, we calculate the same chart, the same birth date, same time. We do the chart for the day after our birth date, same time, same place. Then the next day, and we do the chart. We draw a chart up and calculate and drop the chart 1 day a year. We make 90 charts if we were optimistic. Might even go up to 100, but that was in the days before computers. But that's how it was done. So, and I still do the progress chart for the time of birth. You go through each year of your life, you complete a year. When it comes back to the next day, 24 hours later, that's the next chart. So as you do that, the ascendant and the IC, because the sun's moved ahead in a degree, the sun each day, the progressed ascendant and the angles will be moving about a degree. Well, the ascendant can move a degree or two. The IC will move a little. It moves about a degree, could be a little bit less, a little bit more, but just in that range. And it moves along steadily across your lifetime. So they kind of groove, like not similar to the progressed sun. It goes across about 90 degrees. Again, it can fluctuate a lot with the ascendant. Sometimes the progressed ascendant might move 5 signs, sometimes it might move 3 signs. So it just depends where it is. Now, in your chart, you have your progressed ascendant is your image, what you're projecting at, the way you see things, how you're projecting yourself out into the world. The descendant is how you respond to others. The midheaven is your status and your peak of position and what your sense of reality is out in the world and how you relate to it. The IC is the deep point within yourself, within your sleep, in the midnight point of your consciousness, that inner centering point where you're motivated. And it's where we're coming from, the IC. So I feel the IC is the most important point of the angles and the progressions. And even in astrology, it's one of the most ignored points. It's just everything's, even the computer programs are give you the calculations for the midheaven or calculations for the ascendant, but you can only watch you can see the oppositions to the IC or the oppositions to the ascendant, but even the squares are opposite. The sextiles and the trines from the midheaven are the opposite. There's a sextile would be a trine, would be a sextile. So there's a change in how computers calculate, what computers do for the progressions. So generally, this is the general factor of what's going along with it. So, but I guess you'd have to say the attitude to the. I'm just going to look a little bit for us. Okay, just back a bit on my chart. So I got to go. And this is what I wanted to start with. Okay, so okay. Yeah, okay. So here you see the whole progression angles. By the time you do 90 degrees, you've pretty well covered all the degrees in your chart. Like these angles, but together they do it. Sometimes, like mine, doesn't quite go all the way across. Some people's charts, they go in such a way that it goes, and they touch every degree in their chart by their angles moving around. Should they live long enough? That's really a wholesome or complete life lived in a way. So our next class, we're going to be dealing with how to mix this with the transits and put them together. But this one, we're still going to take the last point of going into this inner depth. And so your inner identity, so you have your outer identity, how you do things. And with the progressed ascendant, as it's moving along, you have like I have my Virgo rising, but it's progressing as it progresses. It stays in Virgo for a while, then went into Libra, then went into Scorpio. So my inner identity feels it would have to evolve or would change, would shift. I'd still be the Virgo ascendant, but with a Libra ascendant, with a Libra agenda, with a Scorpio agenda. This is so like it adds a quality to the inner quality of your ascendant. So does the IC to the inner quality of your personal motivation and depth. To what motivates you, you're motivated by your IC. Where it is, that's your anchor. It's where it's the umbilical cord to the soul. It's you to your unconsciousness, to the depths of being. And we come in from there and come out into the world and move around in it. So the IC is most profound in terms of affecting who we are, where we're coming from, what motivates us inwardly. So as this evolves, as it changes signs, changes factors, there are factors that seem to be necessary evolutionary things to I need to add these elements in to evolve my motivation or my inner sense of integrity. My inner evolution seems to be coming along this line. Just as it's like the sun has your sun sign and you're evolving, each sign has another element you're having to add into your evolution in a way. This is similar, but it's harder to measure the IC. It's more like these are impressionable points that have deep impressions on our motivation. So the identity, each one, and then the opposite point, to me, I do separate ones for the ascendant, for the IC, for the descendant, and for the MC. So when you're thinking the ascendant, okay, well, the descendant's the same. It's not the same. You think the ascendant through how you're projecting out what your identity is. When you're seeing the descendant, you're seeing how you respond to others and how other people are affecting you. And you're watching that evolve. So that evolves the opposite way of your ascendant. How you see yourself, how other people see you, how you respond to others is opposite. Always is. Same way with your inner motivation and what you feel you have to do out in the world to hold things together. And yet while you're doing everything out in the world, you can forget your inner motivation. If you live just in your inner motivation, it's hard to get out in the world. And this is a continuous battle. So we always have this struggle between the ascendant, the descendant, and the MC and the IC in our life. It's like our cross, our crucifix to bear. We're pulled out into my projection and my reaction to people who respond to it. And my inner motivation and how much I can make happen in the world, or how much the world reinforces it or opposes it. That there's always that fight. Like, yeah, which side of a chicken has the most feathers? Same thing, we talked about this before. Well, it's obvious. The outside has the more feathers. That's the midheaven. That's the fluff. The inside is where the spirit is. So, okay. Yeah, so when I have the progressive, you're really basically following these sensitive points along. And as your ascendant evolves, I just put the conjunctions on this one and the dates when the conjunctions would be in my life. You could add in the squares and oppositions if you have them. I didn't have any oppositions to my ascendant as it progresses through my life. But people have all different packages of this. You can add sextiles, terms, you can add all the aspects to it, but it starts at conjunctions, then the oppositions next, then the squares next. Then you can see the trines and the sextiles, and then you can get to the minor aspects. And depending how sensitively you're going into this, you can find all of these things on a computer printer. It'll give you all this stuff. To make the presentation, I just went to the main things so you can see the main factors like the conjunctions and the oppositions will stand out. So here, my ascendant went along. I'm born in 46, and it went into Libra, and then in 1992. So when I'm 51. So 51, no, 40, excuse me, 47, 46, 47, 46. The ascendant went into Libra. Well, it went over my Neptune. So as it came over my Neptune, that was the year at the end of my third marriage. And I've been my whole approach to relationships kind of changed distinctly then. And whether I can say it was a period of sorrow because of the marriage, or really I can see it was the beginning of more spiritual paths. There certainly was a puzzle and a confusion on my personal identity. And it would have been affecting my relationship to others and how others responded. It didn't come the way I thought it was. I was undone. So it didn't come out according to my expectations. That was the ascendant going over that. When it went along and when it conjuncted my son in 2012, well, once the marriage ended, I started to I was really active in astrology already, but I really started to work on research and work on writing things. And over these years, I really put together a lot of the work with the progressions, but really worked deeply then. But I had, by the time I hit my son, I just completed and published my book on the I Ching, an astrological perspective on the I Ching. It was a huge book. It took a while. It took years to make, but it was. I actually published it. It was like 3,500 pages of it on that date, and it mixed the I Ching with the astrology, which is the texture of a lot of what we've taught. I've added of equality inside these classes: the yin and yang, the light and the dark, the active, the passive, the independence, the responsive, the independence to freedom, and the responsibility, and the subjective and objective sides of things. So that was a huge accomplishment. So I really was identifying to goals and a vision and purpose in my life that really solidified a lot of things at that time. What else happened then? That was the main thing. Just looking at that. Yeah, no, it was the Great Treatise. It was not the I Ching book that came earlier. The Great Treatise, which is the spiritual philosophy and the astrological implications of the I Ching, that was the one that came out at that time in 2012. That doesn't, it went into Scorpio, and it goes, and so and then it'll go. It's going to, in 2027, it will conjunct my Jupiter. Okay, if I live that long, then my progression will hit the Jupiter, and maybe some of my teaching expands and my learning. I write some more, something else happens around of a Jupiterian nature. Then if it goes on, if I get into my 90s, it'll conjunct the Mercury and my Mars. Okay, it's never going to make it all the way down to my ascendant. Some people it does. So that's basically how you organize your progressions. You look up the dates of the main ones, and this is a good way of organizing it so you can see them and visualize it and come back and forth to it at different times. So I put the descendant and I put the marks in for when they were, but the oppositions. So my identity got all the conjunctions, my relationships with others got all the oppositions. So I probably got more pumped in my identity and what I'm projecting, and more disrupted by my relationships. So you can, just a quick thing, all the conjunctions, mine's extreme because all conjunctions, all oppositions from the two. But I want to spend most of my time on the IC, and on each person's chart I worked on the IC. But okay, before we do this, here's what you can get on the computer. After you progressed, it does the progress to the natal. Let's see which ones I've got here. I'm just thinking for a second. Just the natal. Yeah, okay. So I wanted to show you how to do this. Just pick up one star. And I want to show you how to get these calculations to get these. Yeah, okay. So